will now redirect you to the WTTW radio network.
Liberty, the condition of being free from restriction or control, the right and power to act, believe, or express oneself in a manner of one's own choosing, the condition of being physically and legally free from confinement, servitude, or forced labor, freedom from unjust or undue governmental control, a right or immunity to engage in certain actions without control or interference. And now, it's time for Liberty Talk Radio with Alex Orville.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Listening to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm Alex Orville. Good night. I'm going to let Julio Rouseo, a freelance reporter, I'm going to let him take over the show. He's going to do an interview with Dr. James Corsi for the next 25 minutes. Julio?
All right, thanks, Alex. What a pleasure, what a treat we have, excuse me, Dr. Jerome Corsi joining us. You can read his articles at WND.com, WorldNet Daily. Dr. Corsi, a Ph.D. from Harvard University in political science in 1972. New York Times best-selling author, has written many outstanding books, including Outfit for Command, Swift Boat Veterans Speak Out Against John Kerry, The Obama Nation, Leftist Politics, and the Cult of Personality, America for Sale, Fighting the New World Order, Surviving a Global Depression, and Persevering U.S. Sovereignty, and as well as his latest book, which is outstanding, Where's the Birth Certificate? Jerome Corsi is joining us right now. Jerome, thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's good to be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming on, Dr. Corsi. You have an exclusive currently at WND.com. Postman Ayers family put foreigner Obama through school. And this is an outstanding article. You have been on the forefront of this issue for quite some time. But before we get into that, for those who aren't familiar with your work, can you just give us a quick background, a little bit of info about yourself and what led you to report on President Obama and the whole birth certificate issue?
Well, I'm a senior staff reporter with WND, which used to be WorldNet Daily, WND.com. And I'm a Harvard PhD. I got my PhD in 1972 in political science. I've written a lot of books, as you mentioned, Unfit for Command. I've got, and The Obama Nation more recently, Where's the Birth Certificate? And I've got two current ebooks. One is Saul Alinsky, the Evil Genius Behind Barack Obama, and the other is A Question of Eligibility. That's about the Arpaio investigation of Obama's eligibility to be president. And you can view these. You can take a look at Amazon.com, Kindle store, or Barnes & Noble, Nook store, or any ebook platform. Jerome Corsi, C-O-R-S-I, and you can see the various options of ebooks that I've created.
Now, Dr. Corsi, what led you to cover this whole, as the corporate media likes to call, the birther issue? Why did you feel strong enough to cover this story, write several books about this issue? What was the tipping point for you that made you want to cover this issue?
Well, I think it was the realization that I started it when I wrote Unfit for, it's really Obama Nation, 2008, and I began to realize that all the different stories Obama's told about his life, are basically fictions. Whenever I researched anything Obama said, it turned out to be different than the way he reported it. I can give you many examples of that. But then, as I looked at the birth certificate, it was clear that Obama has never produced a long-form birth certificate until I was ready to issue my book. That April 27th, suddenly this document that didn't exist before is produced, and when I looked at it, within a half an hour, it was obviously a forgery. And so, that really got me going. I mean, once you see that it's a forgery, I felt compelled to continue reporting on it and to really get down to the bottom of why Obama would forge his birth certificate.
Now, you are a very respected journalist. You, again, one of the best investigative reporters out there. And for those that remember the 2008 cycle, mainstream media, now I call it corporate state media, they really did not do a good job in vetting President Obama. Really, me being from the Chicagoland area, I've heard mumbles about him, but even still in the Chicagoland area, he was still kind of an unknown. We just knew him as a community organizer. With mainstream media not covering this in the 2008 cycle, what are your thoughts on why they didn't cover this, and what are your thoughts on what they perceive of you in covering this issue?
Well, first of all, Obama fit the far left narrative. I mean, he was, he's a closet communist. He was trained by Frank Marshall Davis. He's got all the right credentials at Occidental. He was an openly proclaimed Marxist. He worked for Saul Alinsky organization. Saul Alinsky himself was a communist who just didn't join the Communist Party because he didn't want to be stigmatized by actually belonging to the Communist Party. And then he, the biracial nature of Obama made him a perfect poster child for the leftist diversity agenda. And so the mainstream media, which has become a political media, is no longer a First Amendment, fourth estate designed to investigate government and really reveal the truth. It's political. It wanted to elect Obama. And so anybody like myself who was digging into who Obama was and reporting the truth, I was going to get vilified according to the Saul Alinsky method. That's why I wrote this book, Saul Alinsky, the Evil Genius Behind Obama, because anybody like myself is just going to get vilified, called names, ridiculed, because the left wants to marginalize me so people don't listen to what I'm saying. Even if what I'm saying is true, even if what I'm saying is solidly researched, the left doesn't want to hear it.
That's absolutely correct. I agree with you. And for those that are listening or that could be new to the program and may just easily write this off as, oh, it's just a crazy conspiracy theory. These are just, racists saying these issues and so forth and so forth. What are your thoughts when you hear things like that? Clearly, it's not a conspiracy theory by any stretch of the imagination. You have done hard work in finding actual facts and documentations in investigating President Obama. Just what are your thoughts when just mainline people write this off as a conspiracy theory, just a crazy, made-up thing?
Well, you can take a look at websites like Media Matters, which is one of the groups that reports constantly on WorldNet Daily and Fox News and the others. They're funded by Soros, and Media Matters attacks anybody who doesn't agree with their leftist agenda. And they attack with typically very specious arguments, very marginalized arguments, not necessarily arguments that are true, not necessarily arguments that are even, in terms of the logic of it, compelling. But still, the idea is to simply attack anybody who dares attack the leftist agenda. Fascism, I think you see Jonah Goldberg was right. Fascism comes from the left, and the fascists, Bill Ayers, Weather Underground, wanted zero criticism of their ideas, and that's what you see in Obama. Anybody who dares to speak the truth against the left is going to get ridiculed, attempt to destroy their career, and marginalize them, so nobody listens to what you're saying.
Again, we're speaking with Dr. Jerome Corsi. I'm Julio Noel Ralseo. You can find me on Twitter at JN Reports. For more info on Dr. Corsi, go to JeromeCorsi.com. Again, he is a senior staff writer, investigative reporter for WND.com. Now, before we get into your latest revelation, your interview that you did recently that you posted on WND.com, let's backtrack and talk about your book, Where's the Birth Certificate, and how it's led to a well-known sheriff in Arizona doing an investigation that has led to your latest investigation. When you wrote Where's the Birth Certificate, did you ever think that the information coming out in that book would force the White House to release a PDF of the president's birth certificate?
I never thought it through that would happen, but, I know that Obama is following everything I'm writing, and that the White House is obsessed with what I write. That's been the case since I did the Abomination. I remember I did the Swift Boat book, and when I did the Swift Boat book with John O'Neill, Unfit for Command, we derailed the political, the presidential campaign of, at least helped to derail it, of John Kerry in 2004. So the White House is definitely afraid we'll do it again. And I think that the fears of the White House are legitimate. I'm going to, regardless of how much criticism I get, I'm going to keep reporting stories like I did this week in WND.com, and Sheriff Arpaio is going to be continuing to do his research. And with all of this, I think you're going to find over time that enough information is developed, it's going to be very difficult for Barack Obama to win in 2012.
And you even had, before his passing, Andrew Breitbart talked about he was going to vet President Obama before he had passed away on March 1st, just 20 days ago. And Sheriff Joe Arpaio, some may not agree with some of his tactics, but you have to give this man a whole bunch of credit for going after this entire investigation. Dr. Corsi, what are your thoughts with Sheriff Joe Arpaio? How did he get in contact with you? How did you get in contact with him to help him in this investigation that he's currently doing in Arizona?
I got invited by the surprise Arizona Tea Party to come out and give a speech last August, and they had a petition signed by 250 members of their Tea Party group in Maricopa County. They wanted to petition Sheriff Arpaio to do this law enforcement investigation of Obama's eligibility on the idea that if Obama used a fraudulent birth certificate, they're voting to be on the ballot as presidential candidate 2012, their voting rights as Maricopa County citizens would be compromised if the birth certificate was fraudulent. And so what I did was gave the speech, and the next day I came with them to the sheriff's office, and we presented this petition. And Sheriff Arpaio thought about it, and he agreed to create a cold case posse, one of his volunteer groups, to look into the allegations. And I agreed to work with the cold case posse. I came out for one weekend in October. I presented them all my information that I'd accumulated over the years researching Obama. And I agreed I'd continue working with them. I mean, they corroborate everything I give to them. I'm not part of the deliberations of Arpaio's law enforcement team. And if they ever find information that disagrees with what I've developed, I have agreed to come out and report that I was wrong. So I'm participating as an invited guest, but a reporter. Yet the investigation is nothing that I control or can determine.
How terrified do you think the White House is about this investigation? I mean, just when Sheriff Arpaio announced this, he was raided by the federal government in Arizona, obviously probably trying to send a message to Joe Arpaio. How terrified are they? What type of tactics have you seen? If you don't want to get into specific detail, that's understandable, but just what type of things are the White House trying to do to cover this up and to suppress it so much that it doesn't reach the mainstream?
Well, the Justice Department under Eric Holder is launching a civil rights complaint against Sheriff Arpaio, saying he systematically is violating the rights of Hispanic citizens and illegal immigrants who are Hispanic and is in Maricopa County. And Sheriff Arpaio is fighting that, saying that the Department of Justice has no evidence which proves that point. And it looks to me like recently the Department of Justice, which recently thought they could intimidate Sheriff Joe, is beginning to reevaluate their position and maybe even back down. I mean, if the White House wants to pursue a civil rights complaint against Arpaio, it's going to be obvious. It looks like a mean-spirited attempt, but Arpaio is investigating the president's birth certificate, his eligibility to be president. And if it goes into the district courts, I don't think the Justice Department has the evidence. I think they're going to lose the case.
Well, that's incredible stuff. Now let's get into the article you released 2 days ago on WND, exclusive. Postman Ayers family put foreigner Obama through school. We're talking about Bill Ayers' family in the Chicagoland area. Explain this article a bit, Jerome, and how you got in contact with this postman.
Well, this was, again, something that was developed by the sheriff's investigation, Sheriff Arpaio's investigation. This postman had spoken out in 2009 to a liberal blogger who was an attorney, and the attorney wrote it up. The guy paid very little attention, and the sheriff did a affidavit with the post carrier, and I went out and interviewed him, and we just reported on the interview. Basically, this guy is named Allen Hulton. He was 39 years with the U.S. Postal Service. He was a letter carrier. He resigned a few years ago and is retired right now. He honorably retired after 39 years of service. And he delivered mail in Glen Ellen, Illinois, including to the home of Bill Ayers' parents. Bill Ayers, the Weather Underground bomber, his parents being Mary and Tom Ayers. And in the 1980s, late 1980s, Mary Ayers, he talked to her 18 or 20 times. She would, like many women at home, she would come to the door to get the mail. The postman delivering the mail typically gets to know the people on his route. And Mary Ayers said that they were putting through school, paying for this black foreign student. And the postman took that as interesting. And then a few months later, which I take to be the summer of 1989, the first year Obama was in law school, that summer when he was working at a law firm in downtown Chicago that Tom Ayers, the father of Bill Ayers, set him up with. So after he delivered the mail to the Ayers home, the postman is walking down the sidewalk and he sees this young black guy coming towards him. And the black guy is wearing, a nice dress shirt, open collar, and slacks, and says he's coming to thank the Ayers for putting him through school. And immediately the postman says, "Oh, this is the foreign student." And he remembers talking, got the impression it was Indonesia was the foreign country. And this black kid tells him his name and says that he's going to be president someday. Says it in a very matter-of-fact way. And so then when Obama's running for, we fast forward, Obama's running for president in 2008, and Allen Hulton, the retired postman, hears Obama's voice on the television, and he looks and he says, "This is the kid I saw, all those years ago." And he recognizes that kid was Obama. The physical characteristics are clear. I mean, he describes Obama, perfectly as having remembered him: thin, light-complected, big ears. Big ears was probably one of the most distinguished characteristics. And just identifies Obama as the kid he knew, which means that Mary Ayers, the mother of Bill Ayers, had said that this was a foreign student, which Obama's never been admitted to be, which would also disqualify Obama from being president, and that the Ayers were paying for his education, this radical family. And remember, during the 2008 campaign, Obama lied. He said he just knew the Ayers because they were Bill Ayers, because he was living in the neighborhood and their kids went to school together. Well, Bill Ayers is much older than Obama. And Bill Ayers' kids are all grown up, and Obama's children are two little girls. They never went to school together. Obama was lying, and now it looks like we placed at WND that Obama knew Ayers as early as 1988, the year before he went to Harvard, when he was working as a community organizer, and Bill Ayers and Obama were putting together a radical school program for the public schools in Chicago. We've documented it even with the public newspapers. And now you go forward and here, the next year you've got Barack Obama's being education as a foreign student being paid for by the Ayers. I mean, this is extremely damaging information. If you look at the video I made with Allen Hulton, the Post guy, it's a very credible video. This guy is clearly not sophisticated. He's not lying. He's a postman who remembered the conversation and dared to come forth and tell the truth.
Now, at any point, again, we're talking with Dr. Jerome Corsi, JeromeCorsi.com. You can read his article at WND.com. At any point in time when you were interviewing Allen Hulton, did you sense any fear, any worry from him? I mean, what he's saying is pretty damaging stuff that you and Sheriff Joe Arpaio, with all the information you guys have collected, can easily pinpoint some of his descriptions and some of the different timelines in this story. Did he seem worried at all by giving you this information?
Well, in fact, if you look at the video, I mentioned to Allen, I said, this could be very damaging information. And Hulton, hesitates, and he's thinking, sure, he knows it could risk his life. And he said he just basically felt he had to come forward and tell the truth. And, I questioned him. He's a born-again Christian. He said he swore on his religion that this was true. He has no ulterior motive. He's not going to get paid to come. We didn't pay him anything. He's not getting paid for this story. And he's telling the truth. He knows it's going to be detrimental to Obama. I questioned him hard. I did almost over 3 hours of interviews with Allen Hulton. I said, are you doing this because you're a racist? He said, no. He described his admiration for Martin Luther King. I mean, I asked him from every possible angle. I said, why should I believe your story? He said, because I'm telling the truth. And having interviewed many people in my career, this is a credible witness, Allen Hulton, because he didn't state more than he could have. If he was lying, he could have said, well, I delivered mail to Obama at this address, and I knew Obama. And no, he's telling it like it was. That Mary Ayers said that the family was helping this black foreign student. The foreign student arrives to say thank you to the Ayers family. It's Obama. He recognizes him later. Obama says he's going to be president. He indicates Indonesia is where he's a foreign student from. It all fits together. And it's not the kind of story you tell if you were lying.
I agree. I mean, there's so many bits and pieces of information out there that people may not know about. I can recall my sophomore year of college, I saw the A&E biography on Barack Obama. In the beginning of that film, they talked about how his nickname was Barry, how he lived in Indonesia. His stepdad was an Indonesian citizen, Lolo Sotoro. So, I mean, all this information matches, yet we're being told, oh, none of this is true. This is just conspiracy. This is just radical talk. Jerome, just
all that means is, lots of saying, don't listen to this story. There's nobody behind the curtain. There's no magician. For the Wizard of Oz. Don't look behind the curtain. Left doesn't want you. It's like Baghdad Bob. Go on. There's nothing to see here. That's the left says that when the story is so damaging that they can't afford for people to listen to it, because they know anybody who listens to this will know it's true, will know that Obama was a foreign student. They used the name Sartoro. He wasn't Indonesian. It compromised his natural-born citizen status. His education was paid for by the Ayers family, this extremely radical leftist family. He had a conversation with Tom Ayers, he related, which Tom Ayers is saying almost Marxist things to this postman. Why isn't he concerned about class conflict and being abused and exploited? This is from Tom Ayers. It shocked the postman to hear this from a guy who was president of Consolidated Edison, the biggest utility in Chicago. All credible information. And what it means is that Obama's lying. And that's why we can't see the school records. Obama will not release his school records from any of the colleges, even his kindergarten, to know whether he was registered as a foreign exchange student or who paid for the classes he attended, or the schools he was at. We can't see Obama's passport records, all being hidden. And when you get this postman telling the story, it makes it pretty clear that Obama's hiding the documents because the story's true. Else, why would he hide the documents? And if Obama was a foreign student, he shouldn't be president because he's not a natural-born citizen.
Well, you even have Governor Abercrombie in Hawaii saying, "Oh, I know the Obama family well. I can find the birth certificate." And it turns out he even couldn't find the birth certificate. So like you mentioned.
And then suddenly, it's voila, it's produced because I'm going to write a book. I mean, the whole thing is not credible if anybody thinks about it. Obama is lying. And he's lying because he's not eligible to be president. If the truth were known, the documents were seen, and the forgery and fraudulent identity papers Obama's using that apparently, according to Sheriff Arpaio, may include his draft card, his birth certificate, his Social Security number, and who knows what else.
A final few moments with Dr. Jerome Corsi. Again, I'm Julio Rauseo. You can find me on Twitter at JNReports. You can find Jerome Corsi at JeromeCorsi.com, all one word, JeromeCorsi.com, and his articles are posted at WND.com. Dr. Corsi, let's look at the bigger picture here. Who is to benefit from Obama's secretive past? Clearly, he's blackmailed. I interviewed Wayne Madsen last year about Rahm Emanuel, President Obama and the whole Chicago Democratic machine. All of them, all of these characters are clearly blackmailed. Clearly, something big is happening to allow President Obama to continue to be in the White House. Your thoughts on this?
Well, so clearly, if you look at the money behind Obama, George Soros, who appears to have hated America, wanted to bring America down. Look at the economy under Obama, the price of gasoline. You've got a destroy United States movement going on. I predicted when I wrote The Abomination that Obama would end up with more divided races within the United States, a weakened economy, that we would abandon Israel. He would pursue unilateral nuclear disarmament. He's about reducing the size of our military forces to a pre-World War I level. I mean, this is a destruction of America, destruction of the economy, and it fits a radical anti-America hater like George Soros, who's one of Obama's major funders and who George Soros funds the attack dogs like Media Matters that spend their whole life in hate trying to vilify anybody who dare tells the truth about Obama or about them or about Soros.
What's next, Dr. Corsi, in terms of your investigation, some articles you may release or with Sheriff Arpaio, any future press conferences taking place? How can the public, those that are informed, that do listen to alternative media, how can we get this story out to the mainstream, to the forefront? What more is going to be happening with you and Sheriff Arpaio in this investigation?
Well, this is just the very beginning. There's going to be bombshell revelations throughout. Today, we'll be reporting in WND tomorrow. Sheriff Arpaio has given the Selective Service System 30 days to hand over Obama's original draft card, which it is probable cause to believe is a forgery. There's going to be continual pressing for that. There's live suspects, people of interest, who have forged these documents, including the birth certificate. There's many more revelations about Obama's identity deception, who he is, his past, lies that he's told. I expect there's going to be a continual series of press conferences, press releases, bombshell articles that are going to occur right up to the election, with this law enforcement investigation conducted by Joe Arpaio, determined to get to the bottom of who Obama is and why is he lying about his identity, and who committed the crimes to package this guy, Obama, as I think the greatest deception in American history.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, this is the quintessential Manchurian candidate. No one knows much about him. Even in his home state, they don't know much about him. Comes from nowhere, becomes the president, and then all of a sudden, bits and pieces of information start coming out about him. Do you worry at all that the White House may do something in terms of a false flag or some diversion to get the public's minds away from this issue? Because clearly this can bring down the administration. Already there's talks of impeachment with his actions on Libya and going unilaterally through the United Nations. There's so much against President Obama that, I mean, he may have to listen to Mr. Shapiro when he wrote in the Financial Times of London about a false flag similar to Oklahoma City. What do you think the White House can do to get the people's minds off of this?
Well, certainly that's a possibility, but I think the problem is that, it's why I wrote this book on Saul Alinsky. Obama's locked into this radical leftist agenda. All this talk about fair share of taxes, that's all class warfare stuff out of Saul Alinsky. And Obama's going to rush to the finish to do his socialist agenda to destroy America. And he's going to be glib about it. He's going to give speeches about it. But when you look underneath it, it's going to be a green agenda that never intended to work. It's only doubled or tripled the price of gasoline in his term and spent hundreds of billions of dollars with his crony friends who did green energy companies that were never going to work. The money's lost. This is typical Obama. Socialism doesn't work. The American people ask, are they better off now than they were 4 years ago? I think even if Obama's not impeached, he's going to be repudiated. And there's going to be millions of people following Arpaio's investigation who realizes that this is an identity theft of the greatest magnitude and one of the greatest deceptions ever pulled in American history, a scandal that will make Watergate before it's done pale in comparison.
I absolutely agree with you, and we will continue to follow it through your work at WND.com. We hope to have you on again as more information comes out. And we need to keep you in our prayers, Jerome Corsi. I mean, you are going up against major forces. You are doing what a reporter should do. I mean, I remember reading the speech that killed Kennedy back a couple months before he died when he spoke to the press in New York City, encouraging the press to report on politicians and to not leave things back. And that's exactly what you're doing, Dr. Corsi, and I commend your work so much. And we met at CPAC. I shook your hand, and I just want to thank you for your work, Dr. Corsi.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your prayers, and thank you for being on the show. We're just going to keep going.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Corsi. Fire out your website again and best places for people to get a hold of you at.
WND.com, senior staff reporter. JeromeCorsi.com. I have a website called 1776 Nation. My two recent books are ebooks. Just look up my name, Corsi, Jerome Corsi, C-O-R-S-I. You'll see the Saul Alinsky ebook and the one on a question of eligibility. We're going to be updating it. If you buy either one of these books one time, you can download the updates as an ebook free.
That's absolutely fantastic. Dr. Corsi, thank you so much for coming on the program.